Gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, are we going to war? I was just informed by a gentleman who happens to be from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, now living in Panama, that he believes that Trump is making the right decision by getting involved in the conflict between Iran and Israel. Is he making the right decision, or is he just wagging the dog again? I'm joined now by my co-host in crime, Brock Ganeles, joins us now for the beautiful Hudson Valley in upstate New York. Brock, what say you, my friend? Wag the dog or a necessary and willing participant on the part of America? Audio, get your audio.
I think neither. I think it's psychopathic commander-in-chief, toddler-in-chief, who is feeling like he's either not in on the action and has to show a sign of strength because his military parade sucked, or he's got tweets out that the citizens of Tehran should abandon the city to stay safe. Like, it's a city of millions of people. Like, where the fuck are they going to go? So I don't really see like that there's an underlying strategic nature to this. Trump kind of playing tough guy for, I'm not sure what his end game is. So maybe now I'll give you a little wag the dogish that he wants an event out there where he can play the strongman role. But I don't feel like this is some strategic international politics here, right? I mean, I feel it's just, the problem is that once we get out there, right, we put our troops in harm's way. And second of all, I don't think there's any cooler heads anywhere, so we could do some crazy shit in Tehran. Like, we could kill millions, right? Trump has no empathy. He doesn't give a shit. Like, we could the citizens of Iran are in great peril because the power of the United States is moving in their direction, and our person in charge is a fucking lunatic. And we know that, right? Everyone in America knows that, right and left. So actually, no one has any idea how it's going to play out.
G7 knew it. They ridiculed him behind his back and trolled him. I did see a post that they were serving tacos for lunch. I hope, in fact, they are. Tacos and chicken on the menu would be phenomenal. I mean, but he deserves to be treated like the disaster that he is and the buffoon that he is. He doesn't understand the geopolitical environment around the country, around the world. He doesn't understand the global connectivity. He doesn't understand that there's always consequences, even if it's just, and I say just in the most respectful way, but if it's just American soldiers' lives, that is enough of a consequence to make us think twice. This is going to be expensive. It's not going to be easy. I mean, again, we're going to upset the Middle East, right? We're going to because you can't murder an ideology, right? You can't kill it off, right? Like, there's going to be generations of Iranians telling their kids how much they hate America. And those kids are going to hate America. And their kids are going to hate America. And so on and so forth. So, there is always a consequence. And he has no one. There are no adults in the room. There's no one to help him with this, right? Because everybody who we would trust in a situation like this is no longer there. All we've got is bootlickers and sycophants, to develop a strategy and then try to execute a mission that they probably can't even define.
Well, look, if it was just Trump 1.0, right, and he was just coming in as a strongman and saying, I'm bringing a different strategy to this, and we're going to bring the hammer down on Iran, that would be one thing. But we've already had a Trump 1.0 who came in and basically dismantled the agreement that Obama and John Kerry had put in place with Iran. So that was one of the first things that we unwound. So, nothing's perfect ever in the Middle East, right? So I'm sure that was flawed. The oversight wasn't great of the nuclear facilities, but it was an agreement on Iran's part to allow eyes in to see what they're up to. Now, granted, maybe they're lying and cheating on the side, right? I'm not like playing pro-Iranian here, right? I don't trust them. But there was a process in place. He unwound it. Then, like, as of like a couple of weeks ago, we were in talks again to do a new version of that. And then in the midst of these talks, Israel bombed, and now we're just piling on. Like I don't see or hear or have a sense of a strategy except we're going to bomb the shit out of them with a lot of machismo tweets about how everyone should be on the run and we may wipe them, in essence off the face of the earth. But as we know, it doesn't work that way. It breeds terrorism. Like it's just going to ultimately make us less safe when Americans are out there in the world. It's not the direction we were going, right? We're trying to move the Middle East and we're starting to move into steps forward. We were moving away from war, but now
we're going right
that's
back.
totally out the window.
We don't have any statesmen in this administration. There are no John Kerrys in this administration, no John McCains, no one to explain to Trump what diplomacy looks like. Who's going to do the dirty work here? Who is going to broker a ceasefire? Who is going to go to Iran's leaders with an understanding of their history and a full-fledged understanding of why this conflict exists? I don't know that these Looney Tunes have anybody on their roster.
I don't know. Like Hegseth just got reamed out for, hosting a shitty military parade. So, right, he's on thin ice. So he's just going to roll along with it, whatever crazy fucking thing that comes out of Trump's mouth, right? So, I mean, it's just a misallocation of our military yet again. First, we have it on the streets of LA. Now we have it in the Middle East. The broader problem is like, I gotta be honest with you, Mark. Like, I don't want to be talking international politics with you, right? We're the country losing our own democracy. The rest of the world is secondary right now, right? So, like, to be arguing and even talking about this stuff, like, how is this helping us restore our democracy? How is this a step towards getting Trump out of office? Which is, to me, plan A as fast as possible and not in 3.5 years when there's the next election. Like, how do we engineer an impeachment? How do we actually get some MAGA to peel off and realize that this is such lunacy that even they can't take it? Or it's such an overwhelming protest that they realize that, like, they can't stand in the way of it, or they're afraid to stand in the way of it. I don't care what emotion drives them. I just need a few of them to peel off and realize that, like, this lunatic, senile psychopath in mental decline can't be the leader of our country in the free world.
And Brock, maybe it's another terrorist attack on our own soil. Maybe that wakes us up and lets the MAGA world know, because, MAGA has no global view, right? Their view is 2-3 streets over and their zip code. That's where they live. That's where they breed. That's where they hunt. That's it. They don't get out. They don't go anywhere. They don't travel. They don't understand the global connectivity that exists in 2025. And they don't understand why the U.S. needs to be on the top of the heap when it comes to that connectivity. So, but then again, it's not their priority, right? Project 2025 is the priority. Project 2025 has us watching, the Iran-Israel conflict. Maybe Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation's probably hoping we join in because it'll make it easier for them to do or undo our democracy as they've been planning all along and plotting straight forward and straight ahead.
I always worry about anything when the military raises patriotism and kind of brings America behind almost no matter who the leader is, right? That's thus the Wag the Dog movie and theory, right? I mean, I just don't want there to be the focus. I don't want I don't think an incident on our soil would help. It might just rally people around. Who knows? The left would, the MAGA would just like blame Ilhan Omar or something, right? Like they would just lie their way through it. Fox News would say, this is what happens when you don't support your president enough, blah, 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 blah. And it just, I don't think it will help the cause, and it'll take people's focus off of, the here and now, which is the fact that it's a democracy slipping away. It's more political leaders getting killed / arrested, and it's an intimidation game of our own government against our own people, and that's what's going on right here and now. So I don't think anything that can go on overseas can and should take our focus off of restoring our own, power as people and really our own republic as, I think more than 50% of
Right.
us want it to play out. So it's the intimidation that's going on within our borders. It's the violence that's going on within our borders, which is really where my concern is and where my head is at and wondering like what has to be done to kind of
Right.
fight the war against ICE, right? Which is, a mass Gestapo running around the country, just indiscriminately arresting people and carting them away. The big news in my part of the world is one of the mayoral candidates in New York City, Brad Lander, one of the 8 Democrats running in this primary, got arrested by ICE today at a courthouse as he was helping to, sort of escort someone into an immigration courthouse. But of course, that's where ICE is hanging out, right? Masked, no warrant, no reason for arrest, made up some sort of charge of assault, right? Like just because the guy's walking down the hallway, right? Just shows how you can like fucking bastardize the law and order.
Yeah.
I mean, they released him after 2 or 3 hours. ICE didn't give a shit. They just moved on to the next person, right? There's no recourse. There's
And
no
Brock, I'm even hearing
negative.
and reading online that some of these ICE agents may be newly deputized January 6th felons that were pardoned by Trump. And maybe that's why we're not seeing their faces. I thought that was quite interesting that either Bondi or Nome was going to allow those J6ers to receive paychecks from federal taxpayer dollars. I mean, to me, that really chapped my ass the other day when I read that. And if that in fact is happening, that's got to be an abuse of the pardon power. How many was it? 2,600? Some ridiculous number of pardons, issued over the January 6thers. And these guys can't even send out a press release that's not, riddled with freaking mistakes and grammatical errors. It's a joke. And now we're going to put these criminals to work in our federal government? This is insane. Insane.
Put it in the category of what's to stop them. I mean, they could be a bunch of Jan 6ers, right? They're wearing masks because they don't want to have, any identification because they know some, online sleuths will take a photo of the ICE agent and then they'll go back through all the footage of Jan 6 and they'll start piecing it together, right? And then, we know the public isn't going to like that, right? That won't sit well with the non-hardcore MAGA white supremacists, right? Just those lazy quasi, mildly racist white America isn't going to like that, right? That's not going to feel right to them. So that's going to hurt, but the Trump popularity is plummeting, right? The recent polls have him down like a -9 on disapproval to approval and declining. He actually started in the plus range, which was, almost shocking to me. I would thought maybe at best he would have been even, but up, a -9, right? Like, and he's even underwater on immigration. So like he can't find an issue where people agree with him. But then in the aggregate, they would still fucking vote for him, right? Because racism outweighs all. If there's a 10-question questionnaire, right? They could disapprove of 9 things, but like, yeah, but we like this. We still like this. So that's what we're gonna vote on. So I just don't, so yeah. It's in the what the fuck are we gonna do about it category? Are we gonna get together and march again? Are we gonna move from no kings to no fascism and do another set of marches? I mean,
and
it's
that's
good,
what I was
but
thinking about
it doesn't
too.
do anything.
The last couple of days since we talked, how do we get to impeach and remove, right? Because I asked my travel group, I was like, yo, what's it gonna take, to get you folks out there in the street? And basically they said, for all those alphabet letter people to stand down. So that's FBI, DEA, ATF, ICE. Like, okay, if those folks are out there, we're going to be the ones who get shot once things get mixed up, right? And once the smoke starts clearing, it's going to be a lot of black and brown bodies on the bottom of that pile. And they don't want to be there. So, they were saying they'd much rather see a voter registration effort. And I said, well, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, what if we don't get to another election? Or what if the election is canceled by the king? You know, if the mad king decides we're not going to have an election, he doesn't give a shit what the Supreme Court says. He doesn't care about any federal court rulings. He's going to run roughshod over him like he has been. So, you know, and he's got the Doji Bros on his side too, who I think had real impact on the 24 presidential election.
Well, let's say he cancels the election, right? We'd have to go to the
Right?
streets and protest to have the elections, right? So ultimately, no matter what voter registration campaign you had, then you're just going to have to fight for the right to vote and hopefully have a fair vote. Okay, if that's where they're at. You know, it's not where, you know, me, white guy, wants Black America to be, right? I'd like it to be in a more enraged state. I love it if at least 5 or 10% of Black America would raise their hand and say, all right, we're going to go out there. We'll go out there. We'll take the bullets for the other 95, or, you know, we'll be the sacrificial lambs to quote, see what happens. Maybe affluent white America should start having GoFundMe's and get bulletproof vests and body armor. So maybe black people can come out there in full body armor and just to help get the ball rolling.
What a lot of white America misses, Brock, is that, you know, Black people have been enraged most of their lives, right? You know, we had a coach one time at our high school that asked one of our teammates if my dad sold drugs because he had a Cadillac, you know, and it's like, wait a minute. You know, my dad works 2 jobs. You know, he's the hardest working dude I know. Right. And so, you know, when you hear those kinds of comments, right, the stereotypical views of Black America, just in the movies and on television, and the off the cuff comments I can go way back to Monday Night Football with Howard Cosell and look at that little monkey go. You know, and Jimmy the Greek with the extra muscle that the Black athlete has. And, you know, going back to you know, Adolf Hitler not wanting to watch Jesse Owens. Those kinds of feelings and those kinds of off-the-cuff remarks and those kinds of slights that Black people have been dealing with have caused us to walk around in such a state of rage and dismay. I mean, a trip to the grocery store can turn into a nightmare with a police stop, you know, and a cop who's having a bad day. Right? You pray for your kids when they're driving. Man, you know what? The worst sleep I ever had was when my kids were teenagers and just started driving. You know, and I'm trying to explain to them how to handle the police. I'm not telling them to look out for drunk drivers. I'm trying to teach them how to handle police and a confrontation with police officers that is escalating. And I can't have you escalating. So, you know, and now we get to this point where the Latinos said, nah, we're on the white side too, right? And so that's where Black people are. And that's why you're seeing it be such a high bar for us to join you.
I get it, right? Because this is almost like a case study in white American demeanor, right? Because as I've said, Trump treats white people the way America's treated Black people, right? So, and you see how enraged and how quickly white people get enraged. It takes like one thing. Right? One thing, and they're fucking at an angry town hall, right? So, you know, the question is when does the white rage, you know, build to a boiling point? And it's building. Even like in talking to my neighbors who were at the protest on Saturday, like all really encouraged at the energy of the crowd, the chanting, not just that people were out there, but that it was like, you know, boiling up, the issues that were being discussed, and you know their take, right? And they're both white who I talked to today. There's like, it's building, right? It's going to take time. And I'm like, I'm impatient. We all need to get to DC right now. But they're like, look, it's building. Numbers are building and people's anger is building. And white people are seeing other white people out there and are asking them about it and are seeing friends and people they know out there. And it's making them feel more emboldened to join and or maybe a little bit like embarrassed to not be out there, or, you know, almost shamed into it. But once you go to one protest, it's so much easier to go to the next one and the next one. Then you get like me, where it's like, I'm never going to miss another one, right? So that's where white people are. I get Black people, right? You've been pissed off and disappointed so much, you're going to be last to come to the party. I just, you know, I want it to happen faster and faster. sad to say, I hope things like Trump basically evicting the Martin Luther King statue from the Oval Office
Gets
is the sort of thing that enrages black people enough to say, okay, we're coming to the next protest because this fucking guy is now just like, now he's just pissing on us, right? He's just throwing salt on wounds just because he's an asshole. He put Obama's photo in the closet. Now he's throwing
yeah,
MLK's, statue in that same closet. Like, this is just,
right.
now it's just, quote, insulting. So, yeah, because we
And
need you out there. So I'm just trying to wonder how and when, and to me, sooner's rather than better. I know it's
no
going to
doubt.
happen.
No,
We're all going to be out there eventually.
right,
And bullets will be flying at all of us, white, Latino, black.
right,
Like, they're going to be indiscriminate at some point.
right.
And because Trump's a fucking lunatic. And either it's going to be indiscriminate, or the military's going to lay their guns down and say, we ain't fucking doing this. Like, this psychopath is not telling us to go out and kill our brethren. That's kind of where this could end up. So yeah, I mean, I get it. We're just going to need, as more things get taken away from Black America, and as more, negative outcomes start happening, I think we're going to see more Black people out there joining, just hold on. Just as I think there'll be more white people out there as more white people
Yes.
start losing things also, whether it be
privileges
or,
right.
and
And
flat
impacts
out,
on their family.
right.
If it impacts, if you have a daughter, if you have a wife, if you have a woman in your life that you care about, bodily autonomy is something that you should be up in arms about at this point, here in America. I mean, if anyone's watched Handmaid's Tale, oh my God, that is one of the most frightening things people should be required to watch. I mean, it is a nightmare watching that. You can't look at some parts. And to think that that's where we're headed and that's where they'd like to take us, the heritage folks and, Project 2025 nut jobs would like to take us down that road. But getting back to your Dr. King comment, there is almost universal and unanimous support for Dr. King. Right? Like, nobody argues that Dr. King was actually people do, but they can't do it with a straight face. You can't argue that Dr. King was a communist and trying to take over America, and all this rhetoric that we heard back in the 60s, which ultimately led to his death. Right. And now that we look back and we as a society revere what he was trying to do, and then to take that man's bust out of such a significant place, such a significant holding, in America's political discourse, and put it away in a closet somewhere for it never to be seen, by those who visit that area. I mean, it really speaks to the kind of hatred that this man is bringing to this position.
Yeah, I mean, that's him throwing a bone to the white supremacy crowd, right? He's just, he's just looking for things to tighten up that support because his approval ratings are slipping. So he's got to get a tighter hold from that core group. Why else are the military bases going back to Confederate generals' names? Right? Like, there's no reason for that except we're throwing a bone to, hey, wink, wink, this is our country. And, let's all remember who's in charge around here. And, the MLK statue is just another piece of meat to keep that MAGA group that you said lives in a small world, just happy and feeling like in the social hierarchy of America, they're top of the heap. Therefore, we like what Trump's doing. We may disapprove of 9 things he's doing, but here's the one that he's doing that outweighs all those other 9, because I still feel like I run shit around here.
But I mean, look, the companies that are winning, the businesses and these mega corporations that are winning understand diversity of thought, diversity of talent. They understand why it matters. They understand what it is to have a team. We have MAGA, who wants to be a team in and of itself, and they want to be the ruling class, right? They want to have the money of the billionaires, right? Because billionaires would never want to consider themselves as MAGA. Can you see, Jeff Bezos wanting to have, his bread broken with some of the MAGA folks? The MAGA guy with the big horns who, couldn't get the proper nutritional diet in federal prison. Yeah, well, fuck your fucking meal requirements, fella. You're in prison, Now do some time like the rest of the fucking people out here. But Jeff Bezos is not breaking bread with that guy. So they want the money associated with the billionaire class, but they want the rough and toughness of, MAGA willing to kill, to prove its political point, which is a fucking joke to me at this point. The fact that look, how long have we been saying that, right-wing lunatics are the biggest threat to our country? We've been saying this for at least a decade, maybe more. And now we don't have anybody to monitor that activity, and we don't have anybody basically policing it. It's all a wink and a nod. Hey, just, like they used to do back in the South back in the day. Hey, just don't let us see it. It's like old time Mississippi, old time Georgia, Louisiana. And it's a joke that we're living like this in 2025 and we're just taking mad steps backwards. It's enraging.
Well, look, two white lawmakers, one gets killed, other gets, severely wounded by a white
Loony.
right-wing, theological, zealot. And some senators, joke about it online. And Trump won't even make the call to Tim Walz, the governor, which would be like the standard honorable consoler-in-chief call that you just make. It's perfunctory. Biden happened to be great at it, but it's perfunctory. And then it gets out in the news flow that the call was made, and it just shows that, human life is more important than our differences, and we're political flows. Right. We're not enemies. Trump won't make that call. He's on board with the violence, right? Because he's on board with the violence because the violence happened in the direction that he's comfortable with.
The violence helps him make up for his, let's say, lack of education in the governmental art and the art of government, art of governing. Right? He doesn't know how this shit works. So he's using the most basic elements, to drive his party forward. And that happens to be, the lunatic right. And getting these wingnuts, to use intimidation so they don't vote against his big, ugly fucking bills. So they don't, want to go against him and impeach and remove. We saw that in Trump 1.0. Where people were just too scared to vote.
Look, there's no doubt GOP now, the likeliness of voting against this bill and then getting, targeted, knowing that the crazies out there making lists of people that they're going to kill. So Lisa Murkowski already told us that they're afraid, right? So so a political assassination in Minneapolis plays right into Trump's hands because it just keeps them more afraid. But he's trying to intimidate all of us. And this is where the left has to get tougher. The opposition, we're going to have to take risks in order to get the country back. So the left has to speak out louder, and our protests have to get more aggressive because we can't just tiptoe our way. We can't just show big numbers. Like this, you're going to have to meet force with force. And look, Tim Walz made a nice statement today about we're going to get this country back through compassion and empathy and this and that. And I'm like, okay, that's a nice speech, but come on, that's bullshit. That's not how we're going to get the country back. No, compassion and empathy is not going to defeat the white supremacy movement. It's just not. It's going to, it's a nice maybe thing to say while people are mourning, but that's not it's going to have to be a blunt force instrument of overwhelming protests. And millions of people are going to have to get fed up. That's why I'm happy when I see a protest every day. It's just got to boil up and boil up and boil up. And black people have to go from being angry and disillusioned to just saying, okay, we're getting out there. And white people have to, complacent white people have to go from just saying, oh, if we just put enough numbers out there and we just keep marching and, we'll get ourselves to that next election and then the next election and start realizing the sense of urgency is much higher than that. And then we're going to have to get out there and show overwhelming numbers of bodies and shut shit down. National strikes, no spending. We're going to have to bleed the economy. We're going to have to make Bezos feel the pain because no one orders from fucking Amazon for a week, a month. We got to do some serious shit and stop just living our lives as normal and then taking a break to go protest every so often.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's got to be
One quick hit before
24/7.
we go. Bezos is not wanted in Southern Europe for his big wedding extravaganza. So apparently there are huge protests going on in Spain, Italy, southern portion of Europe about over tourism because Airbnb is driving up the rent rates and people are, being priced out. That live in these, beautiful areas. The folks that live there can't afford a good living, right? So they're shooting at guests of hotels and such with water pistols, right? To make their points. Hopefully Bezos gets soaked. And if he doesn't decide to move his wedding, I mean, he's pompous enough where he'll decide he's going to have it there anyway. But, again, billionaire problems. Who gives a flying fuck?
Europe's pretty polite if it's just water pistols
No
to
doubt.
start.
We know it can be a whole lot. I've soccer games get out of hand.
Yeah. It can get worse. Did Bezos bring his big fucking ridiculous yacht into and just fucking probably trampled about 100 fishing boats on his way to the dock.
Yeah, man. All right, bro. Well, that's it. That's the final word. Parting shot. What do you got?
Mark, I'm so frustrated today. So I don't know. My parting shot is I'm really interested in what's going on in New York. I think the fact that ICE is in New York and ICE is rallying up New York City, I think takes it a little bit next level. Los Angeles is West Coast. Shit goes on 3 hours later than the rest of the country. Sometimes stuff gets missed. It's happening at night for people in half the country. Shit goes on in New York City. The press is there. Media can't ignore it. I just feel like it's going to get more play. So I want a lot of confrontation and protest in New York City. Saw a bunch of it today. I'm looking for more and more of it. I want New York City to chase ICE out of town. That's what I want to see happen. But we're gonna see. We'll leave it there. We'll see where we are tomorrow.
All right. Peace.
All right. Okay, Mark. Thanks. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.